Hello and welcome to Steel City Business, the Sheffield Business Podcast. I'm James Marriott and this is Steel City Business UNCUT, where me and co-host Stephen Kenwright meet someone from around the business world of Sheffield with a real story to tell, to dig into an issue. Being uncut means, well, there's nothing really taken out. We might tidy it up a little bit to take out the ums and the ers, but otherwise it is the full raw conversation. Right, let's do it. Hello and welcome to Steel City Business Uncut. I'm James. Stephen's here.
Hello.
It's been a while.
It's been more than a while, hasn't it?
What's been the highlight of your summer?
Holidays, not working for a little while. I had about 3 weeks off. That was my highlight.
Have you been lying on a beach?
No beaches. I mean, we did go to a beach in Dorset. We went on a cruise around the fjords. So no sunny beaches, really.
I think Norway is targeting me. I'm getting lots of ads popping up on Facebook about doing like mini cruises and stuff around Norway. So I'm going to blame you for that. I'm going to say something to do with
an IP address while we're here, isn't it?
We have a guest. It's Neil Armstrong. Hi, Neil.
Good morning.
Highlight of your summer?
The highlight of my summer was an unbroken period of no work, where we had an overlap of family visiting, trips to the Lake District, trips to Wales. It was just so relaxing. We actually got a dog this year, so we have a puppy for the first time, which I'm regretting hugely, because it's much like having a toddler that runs at 30 miles an hour with sharp teeth.
Wow.
Yeah, we needed that chill out in the summer.
Nice. Neil, on a scale of 1 to 10, how fed up do you get of astronaut jokes?
Do you know, it's actually been an advantage for me in my life. I think, so I'll say a 7, because it does get a bit tiresome. But I think if I was called like Fred Jones or Bob Smith, might be a bit forgettable. Whereas generally, if I walk into a room, people are usually smiling.
Yeah,
I've already had a little chuckle just before I walk in, and it sort of breaks the atmosphere. It's it's a good way into a conversation. So
fair enough.
It's worked. It's been an advantage.
But he's got it 7.
Yeah, it's still annoying.
Nice mention of atmosphere there, though. I think that was a nice astronaut joke to squeeze in as well.
I'm just going to scroll past these and scroll past these. I won't do that one. Right, okay.
Normally I offer a beer if you can come with a joke I haven't heard. I quite like the atmosphere gag.
Yeah, you've got to beat that one. No pressure.
Oh, here we go. Fantastic.
We've set the tone here, haven't we? Nice and early. Neil, tell us about you then. Tell us what you do first of all.
So I am CEO of Tribepad. We're a Sheffield business, software business. There's about 60 of us based in the middle of town. And we have built a recruitment software platform, which is used by some of the UK's best-known companies. So Tesco, Greggs, Subway. If you want to apply for a job in any of those organisations, you go on their website, you upload your CV, you get asked some screening questions, and that's all powered by Tribepad. So last year we helped more than 15 million people apply for a job to various different organisations in the UK. So it's pretty transformational for a relatively small Sheffield tech business.
Give us an idea in terms of the sort of the scale, because I kind of feel like you've really made some impact in the last few years. I kind of feel like I see Tripad's name cropping up kind of here, there and everywhere now.
Yeah, we're I'd say we really do well at punching above our weight. As I say, there's only 60 of us, been going about 15 years, so we're not a startup. We're very much in that scale-up sort of size of things. We took investment back in 2023, so had some private equity investment that's helped us grow in terms of hire people into the team, invest in marketing, invest in the technology. So won quite a lot of new customers, so particularly in the sort of government space, NHS contracts as well. So we're really quite big in the recruitment technology game. One of the leading providers in the UK, compete globally as well. So really proud that you see these companies like Oracle and SAP and Workday who sponsor the golf and the Formula One, and we're going toe-to-toe with those Silicon Valley giants from just a small office in the middle of Sheffield.
I love that. And are you relatively new in post?
So I've been CEO for about 3 months, but I've been with the company about 8 years.
Oh, okay.
So I know where all the bodies are buried, and most of it's my fault. So I've been here, basically helping us scale from when I joined. I think we had about 15 staff and probably 50 customers. We're now more than 200 customers, and as I say, gone from 15 staff to 60 and turning over about 7 million quid.
So obviously off the back of the career as an astronaut, just talk us through your kind of work journey, if you will do.
Yeah, I was born in the Northwest and went to university up in Lancaster, moved down like lots of people did. You get a graduate job down in London for BT. It was right at the start of the sort of the internet boom. So I was involved in the very first broadband internet lines, working in sort of products and marketing for that. And then I've worked in a whole bunch of different always technology companies, so like Sky, Rackspace, if you've heard of them. But then got offered a job at PlusNet, and that was what caused me to move to Sheffield. So worked at PlusNet, again helped that scale up to. I think when I joined there was 100 staff, and when I left there was nearly 1,000. So really used to sort of scaling technology businesses and going on that sort of try and hang on to the dragon's tail. And it's chaotic, a bit like riding a roller coaster, but a lot of fun as well.
And how are you finding being in the top job?
Do you know, some people have asked me, are you enjoying it now being CEO? And the honest answer is no, I'm not. It's really difficult. I went into it with my eyes open. There's a lot of responsibilities, a lot of challenges that sort of come across your desk, and there's nowhere else for them to go. So, I'm not expecting to enjoy the job in the first year. I'll survive the job in the first year. Second year, I'll become really competent. Third year, I'll start enjoying it, I think.
What's been the biggest change from stepping into that role? What haven't you expected that's kind of landed on your desk?
I think I was always involved in very much the growth of the business, which was around getting our name out there, attracting customers and keeping customers happy. We are fundamentally a technology business, so I'd been less involved with the tech side and the operational side, and there's just an awful lot of moving parts. It's very, very complicated. As I say, we handle more than 10 million job applications a year, 200 different customers. There's a huge amount of things that can go wrong on a day-to-day basis, and so I've got a lot more visibility of those than I had before. So just a lot of decisions, I would say. But I'm quite happy to make those decisions and rely on the expertise of others rather than pretending to know everything myself.
I kind of really appreciate the sort of very honest answers that you give to that, because you kind of expect someone who's in that kind of position when they say, you're enjoying the job, go, oh yes, it's very challenging, but of course every day I learn and stuff like that. And you're just going, well, not really, but I've got a plan that means that I intend to feel more comfortable in the job in the future.
Yeah.
What has that been a conscious decision that you've thought, my style in this job is I am going to be really honest, rather than sort of, if I say playing the game, does that make sense?
Yeah, we have an ethos at the company called people first, product second, profit third. And my take on that is employ smart people, treat them well, work with transparency and have a mission people can buy into, and give people autonomy. And that only works in a high trust environment, right? So technology, that particularly what we do in software development, it's a creative industry, it's a creative business. You don't get the best out of people by being very rigid and some sort of autocratic dictatorship just wouldn't work. People couldn't create good stuff. So we have pretty radical transparency in the company. Most of our discussions are in Slack, so open forums for people to contribute to. I'm very much into collective buy-in and decision-making rather than just, thou shalt do this. I think that works far better. And, if you give people that freedom, they'll create a good product, they'll deliver good service, and customers will like it, and they'll buy it, and that'll turn into profit. So, when I say people first, product second, profit third, it's not that profit's a dirty word. It's, we don't start with, we must make this amount of profit. We start with, let's have a great team. Let's make sure our customers are delighted and build good tech. And that will just naturally turn into money. Get the inputs right, and the outputs will look after themselves.
How hard has it been maintaining that ethos after accepting money from others, right? Since you raised, has it made that more difficult to live?
Great question. I think it was something we were very worried about from a cultural point of view of once we've taken investment, because the company had been bootstrapped from the very beginning. Dean started the company around his dining table with literally him and two developers, and never taken money. And 12 years later, here we were. So there was quite a bit of fear that is this going to really change us? We worked with a private equity organisation called BGF, their Leeds office, and they only take a minority stake, so they own 40% of the company. So that basically means we're still in control. what we've benefited from is, they've invested in hundreds of businesses, they've helped hundreds of businesses grow and exit, and they've seen the mistakes, they know the best practice. So we've really benefited from them saying, not being hands off, not being a backseat driver, but actually a really supportive. You should look at this. This is often a problem. Have you thought about this? We know a person over there who can help with that. And so one of the things we did when we first started talking to them was they were asking us about B Corp certification, for example. And they said that, this is something you should really seriously look at, given the ethos you've already got in the business. So we started that journey, and we actually got B Corp certified just last month. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, really, really, really proud of it. Gives us a proper, validity and a stamp and sort of that proof point of, no, look, we are doing the right things for the right reasons. So yeah, they've been really supportive.
I love that. One of the agencies that I work with are now B Corp certified, and I kind of saw a little bit of the hoops that you have to jump through. It's not the kind of thing where you fill in a form, send it off, and they go, yeah, we'll let you in. Like there's some serious work that you have to do there. So that is a heck of an achievement.
It's really onerous. It took us about 2.5 years.
Wow.
And we had to go through multiple rounds of sort of auditing, to a real level of detail. It's definitely not a tick in a box. You have to really earn it.
You mentioned you've been with the business for, was it 8 years altogether that you've been there?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm interested in is when the conversations first started about the idea of you stepping up into the CEO role.
Yeah.
At what point did that kind of first conversation happen? At what point did you become aware that that was going to be your next step, and how did it change your approach to the work that you were doing?
Yeah, really interesting. So when we started the process of looking for funding, so I was very involved with that. Dean, who's the founder, basically said, look, my intention is I won't be here for the next time we go for funding. So, we'll get funding, and then I will gradually step away from the business, and we will find a successor. So I've known for quite a few years that this was coming. So yeah, well, since 2023 that we've known this was coming. And what the board basically agreed was a succession planning process where they would, they put together a job description, and this is the sort of person they want. They got an executive search headhunter involved, searched the whole market across, hundreds of different people. It was myself and another internal candidate who, we put our hands up saying, look, we'll put our hat in the ring. We want the job as well. And so it was about a 6-month process to go through sort of multiple rounds of interviews, present your business plan, and talk about how you would implement your business plan. And ultimately, I was successful, and took up the job on 1st of June. So it's been a long and difficult journey. I think you often hear the mistake that people make is they work in their business instead of on their business. A leader is too involved in the day-to-day and isn't delegating enough and isn't thinking long-term enough. So I've worked very hard over the last couple of years to recruit in a really great team alongside me. So that I had marketing director is miles better at marketing than me. Our sales director is miles better at sales than me. Our head of account management is miles better at account management than me. So I was able to step away from a lot of that day-to-day and really think about, right, strategically, where do we need to be going over the next 3, 5, 8 years? And I think that helped me position myself to the board as why I would be the right candidate to take the business forward.
How challenging is it to avoid getting dragged back into that day-to-day stuff? Because I'd imagine if an external person comes in and they never really understand the day-to-day because they've never done it, so no one's going to they hit upon a problem and think, oh, we'll go and talk to John. But John's never done it, so he doesn't know how to do it. But Neil's been here for a long time. He does know how to do that. Let's go and talk to him about it. And then before you know it, you're maybe not so much working on that longer term vision stuff and a little bit more kind of dragged into the helping people on the day-to-day stuff. Yeah,
I think that is a very real danger and something I sort of wrestle with almost daily. So I'm a member of something called Vistage, which is a sort of professional networking group, and there's a lot of good learning comes out of that because there's various different people who are sort of new CEOs, very experienced CEOs, all sorts of different people who can give you great advice. And, there's 101 books you can read and about what you should be doing to be an effective leader, right? And it always comes down to have a really clear set of values in the company, a really clear mission, recruit the right people, get them in the right seats, delegate properly, make decisions quickly. And I think something I'm quite good at now is being disciplined almost to a point of selfishness. So I will block my diary out for lunch. You are not booking me into meetings between 12 and 1. I will block my diary out for my drum lesson on a Friday afternoon, and I will put my runs in the diary, and I will put focus time in the diary so that I don't just end up in 10 meetings back to back 5 days a week, and because that's what drags you into the noise. And then you're not doing the job you're supposed to be doing. So I think it becomes a self-fulfilling, if you allow it to overtake you, it becomes a bad habit. And then ultimately you're taking the empowerment away from your team because they should be making those decisions. They're the experts. I just see my role as conflict management, where if they really can't get to a decision because it's not clear, well, then I'm happy to come in and help with that. But 99.9% of the time, I shouldn't be needed. The business should run itself. That's the theory, anyway.
You mentioned earlier that your team uses Slack.
Yeah.
Right? How have you noticed you using Slack differently since you've got into this role? Because I always liken it to, I think like I work primarily with agencies, and when they're using something like Slack or Teams or whatever, it's almost like being a recovering alcoholic who spends all the time in a bar. Like they can quite easily see all the problems in front of them, and there's also a lot of people who are trying to put problems in front of them. So how do you manage that potentially instant communication all the time?
Yeah, it is a really difficult one, and I know some people love things like Slack and Teams and others hate it. And I mean, personally, I always found email really annoying, and I much prefer the sort of forum approach and an open approach that you get from Slack. But again, I've been quite deliberate about I've left lots of channels that I don't need to be in. Always have all my notifications muted. Never have notifications come through my phone because otherwise you just do nothing all day except that's interesting. That's interesting. It'd just be a nightmare. I think something that I've also done is, where there's a general question, when people ask a question, they tag 5 people in. Hey, what do you think of this? Well, they don't tag anybody's name in. They just plonk a question in a forum that 48 people are in. You think, well, who do you want to answer that? And so I very deliberately don't answer anything unless somebody specifically asks me, and I'll wait. If I'm interested in it, I'll put a little star next to that conversation and wait to see, okay, well, I think this person should answer that. I'll wait a day, see if they answer it. And if they haven't answered it after a day, I might prod them and go, oh, have you seen that one? Just so that we get out of the pattern of people ask a question and I jump in with the answer, because I think that would just be the wrong thing to do.
I think it's interesting to compare like a services business to a product business in the way that they use those kind of instant messaging platforms.
Yeah.
Because I understand in a product business, you are primarily all working on the same things, right? Different interfaces within that same thing, but everyone largely you need to speak to is within that instance of Slack, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
When I'm working with services business like agencies, nearly everyone you actually need to do something for you is on email somewhere else. And so there's that kind of communication wall where someone has to take something out of an email and put it into a Slack to get a response to someone, to send it back in an email. And I think that feels a little bit incongruous, but I guess it in a product environment, it makes a lot more sense. And I suspect you have to be very careful and deliberate how you design those communication channels to make sure that, you don't have a forum with every single person in it that could theoretically answer anything at any time, right?
It's something you have to actively police, because like everything, sprawl just develops. My favourite key is the delete key. I'm one of these people, I chuck stuff out. My wife often says, if she sits down too long, she'll get thrown in the bin. Yeah, I like clean surfaces, clean kitchen, clean desk, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, the noise and the sprawl of Slack does annoy me. You have to be quite deliberate to make sure it doesn't just turn into a chaotic, noisy space. I mean, you're right about how all of our clients are outside of Slack. So all of our customer-facing teams are using email to talk to our customers, and generally our suppliers and partners. Internally, everything's on Slack. So yeah, there is that translation tax, I think you'd sort of call it, where you do have to take stuff out of email and into Slack. But yeah, overall, I think the transparency is worth the noise and the admin that goes with it.
If you don't want to talk about this, tell me to get stuffed. But I'm interested in asking about, you mentioned there was one other internal candidate who went for the same job as you. And I'm asking this just because I've been in jobs in the past where I've ultimately been promoted above the person that was at the time my boss, and then I became their boss.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's actually worked quite well, and then sometimes it's been really awkward for quite a long time and has become a problem to the point where I realised that they either need to leave of their own will, or I've got to find a way of managing them out of the business, because this is not sustainable long term.
Yeah.
As I say, tell me to get stuffed if you don't want to talk about this. How is that relationship between you and that other person?
So it didn't go the way I was hoping for. We had myself and our COO, both really, I think, both really strong candidates for the job. Ultimately, only one of us could get it. I'd certainly thought, what happens if I don't get this? When you work for months towards something and you then don't get it, it's going to be really disappointing. I'd got my head around the idea of, well, if I don't get it, I've still worked here for 8 years. I've still got shares in the company. I still want it to be successful. So I'll be that person's right hand man, and we'll carry on. I'll be grumpy for a few weeks, but I'll get over it. In the end, I got the job. The other candidate decided that wasn't going to work for him, and he basically said, "Look, if I can't be number one, I don't want to be here." So we had an amicable separation, but ultimately he ended up leaving, which I wasn't expecting. In my conversations I'd had with the board about, how will you implement your strategy, I'd drawn up a few different org charts, and that person was in all of them.
Yeah.
So that turned quite a lot of things on its head. Suddenly had to look at the rest of the management team and sort of restructure things quite quickly. So it was quite disruptive for the company. It was unexpected. I think a few people were quite shocked that it had happened in the way it did. But ultimately, I think you work out very quickly. You're either on the bus or you're not. Right? They say that, don't they? Of look, we're all pulling in the right direction and we're going that way. Yeah. And if you're not, well, it's better you get off now, and we'll go ahead without you.
It is a really tricky scenario, isn't it? Because I also don't think there's a right or a wrong. I think the way that you'd resolved how you would deal with it if it had gone in the other direction is really good and commendable. But also, you kind of understand if someone's reached the point of deciding that they feel they're ready for a top job somewhere, and it doesn't happen, that kind of feeling, well, do you know what, the time's probably right now for me to make a move somewhere else and kind of have another go at it in a different sort of way. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong, but I do find it really interesting because they're very human scenarios in what can feel sometimes like quite a clinical world. In a business world, you talk about your business plan and how you draw up kind of management structures, and that all looks very nice on a chart, but it doesn't. We are humans at the end of the day, and we have feelings and we have emotions. So that's a really interesting one. You mentioned about your business plan and what you presented to the board, and obviously they liked what they saw. I don't know how much of that you particularly want to share with us, but what is your vision for where you want the business to go in the coming months, years, decades?
I mean, I think we're a really successful platform within the UK. We're one of the most well-known. Most people in the street won't ever know that they're using Tribepad. But as I say, if you apply for a job at Greggs or the Met Office or the BBC, you use Tribepad unknowingly as a job seeker. Within the world of recruitment, we're pretty well known. We're not the number one yet, and I want us to be the number one in the UK. But we already do about 5% of our jobs outside of the UK. So Tribepad's in 16 languages. We often say apart from, I think, Vatican City in the Antarctic, we got job applications from pretty much, probably North Korea. I don't think we get a lot of job applications from North Korea. Apart from that, we get job applications from literally every country out there. I'd like to see Tribepad as a global brand. I'd like to see have hundreds of customers in the States, hundreds of customers across Europe. So I'm absolutely confident that we can grow this business globally and make it, a real success. So that's my vision for where we go.
Talk to me a little bit about the tech world then, because it feels like an ever-changing, quite fast-moving world, but has done for many years. I'm not sure there's ever a point where it stands still, but where do you kind of see it at the moment?
I think there's a quite an easy narrative, right, to be had, particularly if you go on LinkedIn or YouTube, wherever, where, the pace of change is faster than ever, and nobody can keep up. It's like, no, it's not. There's always been change, and I think the change is, I can't remember who, it might have been Bill Gates or somebody like that, sort of says, everybody overestimates the amount of change that will happen in 1 year, and everybody underestimates the amount of change that will happen in 10 years. And I think that's always true. We're told at the moment, AI is going to take your job next week. It's all chaos. No, it's not. If I speak to Alexa and ask her to play the Beatles, she quite often still plays the Bee Gees. And I think we're still a little while away from AI completely transforming things. But I think people who underestimate the seismic shift it will have over a longer period are in for a really nasty surprise. So we see generally that people struggle with the pace of change all the time, and I think they probably already have. You can imagine tractors and plows and whatever analogy you want to use in history. I'm sure there's always been a real struggle with people with the pace of change. But certainly in the world of recruitment, everybody is used to, I say everybody, the vast majority of people are used to scrolling on their phone when they're on the bus or the train or on their sofa looking for a new job. You can now just tap your thumb, apply, and your own AI tool will go away and apply for you while you sleep. Brilliant. But the result of that is people are often now applying for hundreds of jobs at a time, and often they're applying for jobs that are totally unsuitable to them because they haven't really looked at the company and they haven't really looked at the job. They've just clicked, apply, without giving it any thought. And that's not a really good way to be engaged with something as important as your job, right? I mean, you can do it 40, 50 hours a week for however many years. That's a huge investment in time. So surely it needs a little bit more thought. And the result of that is recruiters who, perhaps got 30, 40 job applications per role a couple of years ago are now getting hundreds of people applying for their jobs. And often those people don't even know they've applied to it, because whatever tool has applied to the job for them. So you get this called the sea of sameness, where everybody goes on ChatGPT and says, make my CV look good for this job. And so ChatGPT does the same thing for everybody's CV. So the recruiter gets bombarded with 100 CVs that are completely identical. And so the process is really broken. So that, technology has good and bad. It's great that you can look for a job on your phone on the bus, but the downside of it is making the whole thing very transactional in what should be quite a personal, relationship. That's what I think.
I wonder if it's almost becoming too easy. So this is a true story. I accidentally applied for a job the other day. Right. I'm not looking for a job. I'm very happy in self-employment. But there was a role that came up, and I can't remember what organisation it was at, but an in-house role. And I thought, I wonder what that pays. So I tapped a button, and next thing I got a message saying, thanks for applying. And I'm like, how's that happened? And that was just through LinkedIn, and completely accidentally. It wasn't paying enough attention, obviously, to what I did. So I might well get a job that I didn't intend to apply for. Who knows? And so how else is recruitment kind of changing then?
I think, what's changing for the good, despite what's perhaps happening in politics and particularly in the US, is organizations are trying to make recruitment better and fairer. So we know, historically women have been underpaid. I think minorities have been underemployed. There's been all kinds of discrimination against people with neurodiversity and God knows what else. So our motto is making recruitment fairer, faster and better. And what we've seen is actually the vast majority of organisations are thinking really seriously about this, and they want to be a good employer and they want to do the right thing for society, not just to comply with the laws, although obviously people do need to do that. What I often hear is our customers saying, we want our workforce to represent our customers or our community. So we've got quite a lot of local government customers, for example, We worked with Coventry City Council, and they were looking at their workforce and the sort of number of applications and the number of hires they were making, and the ethnic makeup in Coventry was something like 42% Black, Asian, and minority ethnicities, and when they looked at their hires, it was something like only 20% of people they were hiring were from those communities. So they could clearly see a mismatch. Well, we're literally a government organisation that's there to serve our community, and we're not representing our community. So they looked at the whole recruitment process front to back, from the sorts of skills they were asking for, the experience they were asking for, where they were advertising, the wording of their jobs. They then looked at the process. We helped them put in place an anonymous application process, where you strip the name and address and all that sort of stuff, and schools from your CV. And they've been able to completely transform their recruitment now, where the number of hires from different groups in terms of age, ethnicity, gender now matches their population, and so straight away is more representative and more fair. So I think that's changing. Companies are much more focused on getting that right now, and they see it as a business benefit rather than just, we'd better make sure we do this so we don't get in trouble. Actually, they see the benefit of having that diverse workforce that represents their customer base.
Thinking back a second to that point around the scale that comes from automated applications, I saw that the Canadian government's rolling out plans to make it illegal to ghost applicants in years. Can you see something like that being rolled out here? And if so, how would that change things?
I mean, the problem, yes, ghosting candidates is just horrible. We know it happens in an enormous number of cases. The vast majority of people who apply for a job go into a black hole and never hear back. And there's no good reason for that. You should be getting an acknowledgement, thanks for applying. You should be being told quickly if you haven't been successful. The software is there. Mm-hmm. It's quite easy to give people even a short automated rejection is better than nothing. It's psychologically it's bad for people to just be left in that period of uncertainty, and we know it causes real harm. So I think what the Canadian government is focused on is a real problem. I'm always hesitant of let's reach straight for the legislation as being the answer, because we know that businesses have lots of burden and lots of red tape already. We've seen that in the economy over the last year, where we know that we can see really quickly what's happening to recruitment volumes, right? 'Cause we've got some pretty big, well-known customers. And there's no doubt about it that the tax changes that came into the national insurance, the additional legislation around your obligations to new hires has slowed the amount of roles that people are advertising. Mm-hmm. It has affected recruitment. So I think adding more and more law to, you must not ghost candidates. I agree with the principle. I'm not sure putting the law in is the right thing to do. But we think ghosting is. We actually have a campaign that we do called End Ghosting, specifically to deal with that problem, because it's really bad for the employer as well. We have a lot of our customers are sort of high street organisations. Well, if you've applied for a role and you don't get it, well, you can go into the shop next door. So it can cause real harm to that business if they treat job seekers badly and then they ghost people. It can cause real damage to to their revenues and profits.
Yeah, I think you just touched on it actually there. What I was thinking as you were saying that is that a tech problem or a resource problem, or is it a culture problem? Is it because if you get knocked back by a business, but the process is still really good, perhaps you get some nice feedback, or you just get something that feels quite personal. Yeah, you go away thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to get a job with them, but you still have quite a positive opinion of that business, of that brand in the brand world that we live in now. If you get ignored by someone, whether it's for a job application or anything, if you reach out to a customer service department and you don't get anything back, your impression of that, and it's not weighted either, is it? It's kind of like your impression of them goes down much more than maybe it should do just by the fact that you've not had an email to something like that. Yeah, I don't know if there's an answer to that. I guess it differs from one to the other. But
yeah, I remember hearing at university that when you have a good experience, you tell one person, and when you have a bad experience, you tell 9. So You know, that goes back to that whole thing of this is a bad idea for businesses to be ghosting candidates. I think there's lots of reasons for it. I mean, I think right at the front end, you know, we mentioned just earlier about recruiters, generally speaking, are drowning in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications and haven't got enough hours in the day. They're quite often also seen as an overhead in the business. So, well, we're not recruiting that many people at the moment, so let's squeeze the recruitment team and they can just cope with what they've got. And so they end up too busy to cope. I think there's also a fairly natural sort of cultural thing within the business, right? If you're the hiring manager and you need somebody, you know, you need to recruit somebody next week or whatever, you're focused on getting that person into the chair. You're not that focused on the other candidates. You know, you got 100 people apply for the role. You know, you want the one into the chair who's going to help boost your team. It's quite easy to forget about, you know, the other 98, 99 and not see that as your problem. And I guess finally people don't like giving people bad news. So I think it's quite easy to just sort of go, oh, I really don't want to tell that candidate that actually I just didn't like them very much. And there was actually just somebody who I preferred. So having more objective criteria in the recruitment process helps, because then you can say, you know, look, you scored a 5 here, a 4 there, but you only scored a 2 here because this is the answer you gave. And then you can be much clearer to somebody about why they didn't get the job. But that takes time. And again, you know, if you're a hiring manager, let's say you're running something on the high street, you've got customers coming in, you've got suppliers things, you've got this going wrong, that going wrong. It's really easy to forget about the 12 people who applied for the job who weren't suitable. It's a difficult problem.
Yeah.
It's getting worse as the volumes go up.
Thinking back, Stephen, to we often end up talking about the early days of Rise at 7, but you recruited quite a lot of people very quickly, didn't you? Like it grew really big, and it became a very kind of sought after agency to work at. So I imagine that overwhelm of number of people versus number of roles and stuff was pretty big.
Yeah, in 2021 we got 3,000 applications.
Wow.
And they were largely concentrated on a few different areas. So although we might have hired in 10 different roles over the course of the year, 10 different disciplines, out of those 3,000 people, 2.5, maybe more than that, had little experience going into a kind of graduate role, basically.
Yeah.
Which is the hard one, right? Because if it is a graduate, if it is someone coming for their first job, you know, they're going to get another job somewhere. It's not that they're in a job and they're waiting for, the next opportunity and this just feels like a better one than the one that they're in. It's like, I need a job, so I'm going to go and get a job. So you have really got one shot with those people. So there was a lot of emphasis put on to understanding when we would need new people and to what degree we could hire ahead of the curve in that regard. But then there were a lot of other disciplines that were much more, I say, technical, like the kind of web development type of roles where actually, even if you've got 3,000 applications, you're still going to go and headhunt those people because you might get 1 or 2. But for the most part, it's a bit of who you know. It's a bit of some specific skills. So there was a real mixture between trying to manage a large volume of applicants who were tend to be graduates and finding other applicants who, you talked about executive search a little bit earlier. We generally headhunted for senior roles for the most part. There were once or twice that but we got no idea what we need here. So we'll put a job spec up and see what happens basically, and we'll be open to what kind of person we get. But it's still a balance, and I think even the large employers are going to have that, where there's the volume roles and the ones that are a bit more difficult to fill. Yeah, in an inbound sort of way.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, that story, because it very much resonates with what I see today with our customers of all sizes. Is they tend to have 2 problems. They'll have a certain set of roles they put an advert for, and they get hundreds of applications, and it's about trying to sift down to who's suitable. They'll have another role they'll put up, and nobody applies. And they then have to go proactively searching, and that problem is still very prevalent today. And there are plenty of roles out there where you can earn good money. There's skills are scarce, and people can move from company to company and get a really good career. Likewise, there's lots of roles where it's incredibly competitive for particularly sort of blue collar hourly work. It's very competitive. You've got to move really quick to grab the jobs.
It's a long time since I've been involved in a recruitment process, but I used to quite look forward to it. And then the reality kind of kicked in about halfway through the process when if you're doing a day of interviews and maybe sometimes we might cram, 8 or 10 interviews into a day. By the end of the day, you're just hearing the same stuff over and over again. And a lot of them are graduates, and you kind of realise everyone's kind of told to say the same kind of thing. But it would really wear me down. And at the end of it, I'd feel quite a little bit disillusioned by the fact that everyone's just kind of like identikit. And this is leading me on to the inevitable question that I'm going to ask you about AI, really. And where how do you think that's going to change recruitment?
Well, it already has. It's already changed it. People are already using, as I say, ChatGPT and other tools to improve my CV. And the result is everybody's CVs are starting to look the same. And the CV is a terrible document anyway, right? It's full of
It really is, isn't it?
Leonardo da Vinci lied on his CV, and everybody's been lying on their CVs ever since. So, but instead of human-written lies, you've now got robot-written lies.
Yeah.
So, they're becoming a pretty useless document for recruiters to try to figure out who's right. There's also some nuance in there, right? So let's say you work in you want to work in the care industry because perhaps your younger sibling's disabled, and that's what's given you the motivation to go and work in the care industry. You're probably not going to write that on your CV, but it's the sort of thing you might say in an interview. So trying to tease somebody's motivations and behaviours out of a document that says, I went to school and did these GCSEs and then I worked as a shop fitter here and then I was an engineer there. It just doesn't give you the personality behind. So there's definitely a move towards more assessments, and you might see these things like sometimes you see them where you have to blow up a balloon on your phone and things like that. It's like gamified assessments where the candidate is sent a set of the best practice, right, is send some job-specific questions that are relevant to that job and relevant to that organisation so that you can sift out the people who, for example, if you haven't worked in healthcare for 2 years, just take those people out. If you haven't, if you're going to be an in-home carer and you haven't got a driving licence, you can't do the job. And you can screen lots of people out like that and then present a smaller set of people to an assessment that's better suited, some sort of situational judgment test or, is maths important? Are your English language skills important? Do you need to know a particular coding language? That sort of thing. And then the CV can sort of come later in the process as a much like this interview, right? A set of questions. Read the CV to give you some questions to ask that person about their life, rather than use the CV as the thing that you actually sift the person with to start with. So AI is going to help automate some of that initial screening to filter out the people who aren't suitable and tell them why they're not suitable really quickly in an automated way so they're not left ghosted. And it's going to free you up that time to focus more of your human interaction on the people who could do the job, but you've actually got to tease out who's right for the job. So I think that in the recruitment process, that's what's going to change. Clearly, in the actual what jobs are available, companies are already looking for people who've got AI skills, and people are going to start saying, if you haven't got this qualification, you can't prove you can use AI in this way, you're not going to be suitable for our roles. And that's like any new technology, right? There's early adopters, there's late adopters, there's people who are fearful of it, there's people who are all in. And I think generally it's going to be one of those skills where if you don't learn how to use this pretty quickly, it's going to be like coming to work and saying you don't know how to use a laptop. I think it's going to be that important.
And I know this is kind of turning into just a general kind of discussion about recruitment, but I find it interesting. So what's your opinion in terms of LinkedIn then specifically? So I was asked by I was chatting to someone probably a couple of months ago. They had a kind of a podcast project that identified me as being probably their preferred person to deliver it. And about halfway through the kind of discussion said, "Can you send us your CV?" So I said, I don't have a CV. I've not had a CV for years.
Yeah.
And I could do one, but I really, really don't want to. So here's my LinkedIn profile, which showcases pretty well like what I can do, what I've done. It's got all the education stuff on there, but it also shows you a bit of me. Like there's as much personality as I choose to kind of display on there, and I think that's a much better impression or a much better way of getting a real feel for who someone is. And they were fine with that. I thought if they kick off about that, this is probably the point where I have to pull out of this whole process because I'm not writing a CV for someone. Other people would probably hate that approach.
I really like LinkedIn, and I like what you've described there. It's a sort of community verified, it's not completely proved that you did that job at that time, but you have to say what company it was and what date it was, and therefore people can go and say, oh, well, I know somebody who was there. I'll just go and check out if they remember you. So it's a way, I think, of validating and verifying somebody's work history a bit more. And as you say, opening up a bit more of their personality. What stuff are they following? What do they post about? What do they like? What are their interests? So I really like it from that point of view. It does feel, I know my kids look at it and they're like, wow, it's Facebook for old people. They do it in suits and ties. It's very much a white collar community. And it seems to be on a bit of an algorithm thing at the moment where it's more about the videos you're posting and it's becoming a bit more TikTok-y, and I can see I can see why they're doing it from a growing revenue and engagement and all that sort of stuff. It works, but I do wonder that it's undermining the fundamental value because it was supposed to be a way to connect with people and make connections, not see some influencer in America who's dissecting some advert that you don't care about. That's not why I'm going there. I'm going there to connect with people.
I'm curious because you work with a lot of employers as well, and you talk in particular about verification, community verification. What's your opinion on Glassdoor? Because that as a platform, I think doesn't have the benefit of LinkedIn where everyone can agree that someone actually worked in that place in that job. It's just you can anonymously flag off a company if you want to.
Yeah.
How does that play into most of the companies you work with, their strategy?
Yeah, I mean, certainly all of our customers are very aware of Glassdoor and Glassdoor marketing and making sure that you're on top of, you get bad reviews, you've got to reply to them. I think there's I'd say a no smoke without fire rule. If somebody's got a terrible score on Glassdoor and there's lots of stuff about them, that's probably something you should look into. I do think, one of the benefits of LinkedIn is it's real people and real profiles. And one of the reasons I got off Twitter and Facebook and stuff years ago was I just hate the idea that you can say and do anything anonymously. I just think it's really dangerous. I don't think it's good for free speech either because, just everything becomes horribly toxic. So, I think I'm not sure Glassdoor would work if you forced validated and verified each user, because I think people would just stop posting in the way that, if it was, why hasn't LinkedIn added that feature, for example, rate my employer? I suspect because people don't feel comfortable to do it publicly with their name at the bottom of it. So I'm not sure Glassdoor could exist if you made people verify themselves. But there's always going to be people on there just making stuff up. And very, very rarely will people post, I got sacked because I was crap at my job. Yeah. They'll always come up with a reason for why the employer was wrong or the line manager was wrong or whatever.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
There's a very weird thing going on at the moment with Facebook and anonymous posts because you can now post in groups literally anonymously. So you come up as anonymous profile 752 or something like that. And then there's a really weird thing happening with the algorithm where there's a lot of people who are being, I think the phrase is shadow banning. So whereby if you post a lot in groups, you're scored down. But if you post anonymously, you don't get that same kind of score. So it's actually more beneficial to post stuff anonymously than under your profile. I'm like, in what world is that a good thing? Like, how has this happened? How has it got that bad whereby people are actually posting anonymously and saying, my name's John, but I'm posting anonymously because I've been shadow banned from this group because I post too often or something. You're like, that's really messed up. Let's talk a little bit about Sheffield.
Yeah.
And a bit about what's your thoughts in terms of how is it in terms of being a place to be building a tech business right now?
I mean, we really like it here. We're really proud to be based in Sheffield. And one of the things that I love is that, generally our customers are all over the country. But everybody who works here is really, really proud to be in Sheffield. I moved to Sheffield 20 years ago, something like that. Turned the job down a couple of times. It's like, why the hell would I want to move to Sheffield for? And then came up and saw it, liked it, thought, I'll give it a couple of years. And 20 years later, I intend to be here for life. So there's access to really good talent. And I think it's talent that enjoys the green space. There's so many benefits to being in Sheffield as well, that people are happy with their lot, if you like. I think it's very different to if we were based right in central London. I think we'd have a very different team. I think we have a really stable team. We've got really low attrition, and I think partly because people recognise that Sheffield's a great place to be, and we're a good employer and we're going places. So yeah, I think Sheffield's a great place to have a tech business.
I love kind of saying Sheffield does have a slightly different beat to other cities, and some people say, well, how do I kind of figure that out then? How do I get to understand it? And I go, it's really easy. You've just got to be here for 25 years, and it makes sense. So you've only got 5 years to go, and you'll be a local. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. What do you think needs to happen here then? How does Sheffield move forward? Now we talk about this quite a lot on the podcast, don't we? And it does. I think we end up going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, really, in terms of like the Stephen and James manifesto for improvement in Sheffield and what we want to see happen. But I do find it really interesting getting people's perspectives on that, because Sheffield's in a place, and I think most people would like to see that kind of move and progress. But how it gets there, I think, is an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I think Sheffield seems to occupy a difficult sort of position on the sort of the rank of cities, I would say. I guess globally and certainly within the UK, the biggest cities get bigger and the smaller cities get smaller. That just, I don't think anybody can stay the same. You're either growing or shrinking. And I like seeing the investment that's going into the city and making it look nicer. And we've got, the same challenges that many other places face, right, in terms of empty units and lower footfall, particularly since COVID. I do travel around a fair bit, and, Manchester's buzzing and Birmingham's buzzing and London's buzzing, and I come to Sheffield and sort of walk around and it's not that busy. I hope there's enough people to keep that shop open, and I hope that coffee shop's getting enough places through the door. So I do worry that we don't seem to have that momentum. I don't know if we're going backwards. I don't think it's that bad, but it doesn't feel like we're growing strongly in the way that when I visit other places, you think, this has got a real buzz to it.
One I think the interesting things about Sheffield, and I made the point a little bit earlier about the difference between a services business and a technology business or a product business. I think instinctively, whether it's the council, whether it's the groups like Sheffield Digital, lots of different stakeholders in Sheffield kind of instinctively get product, because they're like, well, it's just manufacturing, but on a computer, basically. So it feels like there's a lot of, not necessarily a huge amount of investment, but certainly support. There's certainly willingness and interest in that. The services sector is quite different in Sheffield, and we've been quite marketing agency centric over the years, and I think you talk to those people like, well, we don't really get any help, nor do we get much attention. But I think I'm not saying you've got it easy, but I think you can point to 3, 4, 5 really great tech businesses in Sheffield, and you can see why. I understand where they're getting some talent, and that there's places for them to grow and places for them to go, really. So I feel like that's one of the areas where Sheffield's quite strong. I feel quite positive about the kind of technological future of the city generally. Yeah.
It's really multi-layered as well, isn't it? Because I feel quite positive about, I enjoy seeing like new cycle lanes and stuff like that pop up. And I love going on, if I ever feel like I need a little bit of a boost, I'll go on Facebook and try and find the latest story that the Star have published about that roundabout at West Bar and just read the comments, because that just makes me feel so much better. Because it's always like, white middle-aged men whinging about a roundabout that they don't understand. And I sit there going, it's not for you, it's about attracting the next generation and making Sheffield, I think it's already considered quite a green city, but I'm like, if we can end up with, the most kind of, cycle path network in the north of England, there'll be a generation that grows up where that's really quite desirable, and that puts in a really great position in terms of, if we say Manchester and Leeds have won today, the here and now, but actually, it's all up for grabs as the world continues to change. So in 20 years, when it's different and maybe what people are looking for is different, I like kind of seeing Sheffield, I feel, position itself a little bit with a thought towards what are people going to want in the future and what's going to attract people, which is kind of relevant from a recruitment point of view as well, because I think if you want to recruit people and get them to move to somewhere, I think maybe Brighton is the best example of this, whereby, if you apply for a job in Brighton, it's partly because you think, I want to go and live there. I want to be part of that thing. There's a buzz around it. There's no reason why Sheffield can't be that in the north in the years to come, but there's so much legwork that needs to take place to kind of build that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, as I say, when I was living in London, my impression of Sheffield when I got offered a job was, no thanks. And then I came up and thought, and it was when they were doing it at the station, and the fountains and the steps was all just being done. And I was like, oh, this place looks like it's getting some investment in. And I love the green corridors that are being made. Yesterday I was at Cambridge Street Collective with the family, and then went and sat in Pounds Park and had a coffee. Fantastic, gorgeous place to be. Absolutely modern, exciting, interesting architecture, stones, plants, brilliant. More of that, please. And I'm really enthused by, the amount of building that seems to be going on. There's cranes everywhere. There's, take the Parkway out. There's huge units going up. There's clearly a lot of regeneration and rejuvenation. So I'm optimistic for Sheffield's future. I think, if I think about our business and what support we've had, I'm aware that there are, big companies have had, big tax breaks to come and build factories and things, and I get it, those are big ticket items. But I remember we were approached by a council in Ireland, and they basically said, come and open an office of software developers, and they were throwing some pretty attractive things our way in terms of tax breaks and cost of employees and all sorts. I don't think we've ever had anything like that from Sheffield Council. We've done it ourselves. And I might be wrong, but I'm not aware that there's been anything particularly good or bad. I'm not even sure they know we exist.
Yeah, interesting point. You're right about all the building and stuff that's taking place. And I sometimes say to people, if you need a little bit of inspiration about where how Sheffield is changing and stuff like that, if you go out the kind of the back doors of the station, you go past the amphitheatre and just up to, and I can't say this and I'll say it wrong, the Cholera Monument.
Yep.
Cholera. Amazing view. You just get this fantastic view over Sheffield, and it kind of like seeing how the sort of the skyline of Sheffield is changing and where cranes are popping up, and there's obviously stuff happening. And I do that maybe every couple of months, and it's slightly different every time. And you actually think, do you know what? There's stuff happening. You can't know everything that's going on, but when you kind of take that little step back and that snapshot in time, and you think, you know what? It's we're however small a part any of us are in that. We're playing our little role in seeing this thing change, and I take a lot of inspiration from that. So there's my rallying call for anyone that needs that. Go up to the Cholera Monument, and just take a bit of time to have a look out over the skyline of Sheffield.
Yeah, no cholera anymore either. So
no, yeah, that's good.
Another highlight.
Cholera. I really can't say that. I'm all out of questions. Anything left on your list, Stephen? Neil, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Best of luck for the future for you as you develop into your role, and obviously for Tribepad. And I look forward to seeing the amazing things that you do in the coming months and years.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, fellas.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of Steel City Business. It's been really lovely to have you with us. Now, you know how this works. If you've enjoyed it and you want in on future episodes, then just follow us on your podcast app or on YouTube. The show is very active on LinkedIn. Just search for Steel City Business and come and connect with me as well while you're at it. There's loads more about the show at steelcity.business. And you can get in touch by emailing James at steelcity.business. And hey, if you're in business in Sheffield, then, well, why not put yourself forward as a guest for a future episode? And of course, we're always open for a good chat about how audio marketing could work for your brand. Until next time, thanks for listening.